This presentation tells the story of the volunteer monument at Castlegar, County Galway. So where is Castlegar? Well, it's a parish on the north side of Galway city nowadays. But at the time of the activities which this monument commemorates, it was largely a rural community. In 1950, the local newspapers reported that memorial committees were established in a number of areas around Galway city and county to erect monuments remembering the events of the period from 1916 to 1923 in the county. It was necessary, of course, to fundraise for any monuments or memorials that would be put up. As this slide shows, even after the events of the monument's unveiling, fundraising was still being undertaken. And this slide commemorates people from the Clare Galway parish, a neighbouring parish, contributions. The monument, though, is a very interesting one because it had a previous life, or at least part of it had. The lower half of the monument is composed of a granite plinth that is polished, and it now has inscriptions on 3 sides, which we will look at later. The National Inventory of Architectural Heritage, sponsored by the Department of the Environment, the experts describe the monument as a limestone cross set on a polished granite base. The polished granite base originally stood in Eyre Square in the centre of Galway city, and on it was a statue of Ulick Canning de Burgh, Lord Dunkellin, who was a former MP for Galway, and also the son of the Marquess of Clanrickard. This photograph shows the original location of that granite plinth. It was taken in the 1890s, and we see in it Lord Dunkellin's statue still in situ, close to where we knew Pádraig O'Connor's statue, now in Galway City Museum, and there's a replica in Eyre Square but in a different location, and not too far from the Brown Doorway. We also see the cannons which had been retrieved from the Crimean War and which stood in Eyre Square for many years, and they're now located at Galway City Hall. The statue of Lord Dunkellin was raised by his friends following his relatively early death. He was only 40 when he died in 1867. And as previously mentioned, he was an MP for County Galway and the son of the Marquess of Clanrickard, who was one of the largest landowners not only in County Galway but even in Ireland in general. And the sculpture was completed by John Henry Foley, who was a very well-known Irish sculptor at the time and who completed the statue of Daniel O'Connell, which is still in O'Connell Street in Dublin. By 1922, however, priorities and interests had changed a great deal, and the statue of Lord Dunkellin was unceremoniously removed from that plinth, and tradition has it that it was brought down through the town of Galway and cast into the docks. Researchers in recent times, however, have established that Lord Dunkellin didn't remain in the docks for very long, and that he was retrieved from there and possibly melted down. As our colleague at NUI Galway has written, John Morrissey, political and cultural prioritisation of what elements of Galway's past were deemed a component part of its heritage in the new Irish state was at work. Not everyone agreed, however, that Lord Dunkellin's statue should have been dumped. The parish priest of the Pro-Cathedral, St. Nicholas's Pro-Cathedral in Galway City, thought that such activity smacked of Bolshevism and that it was a work of art which had been wantonly ruined. In 1951, at the unveiling of the volunteer monument which we're looking at, the newspapers reported that the plinth had been removed from Eyre Square some years after Lord Dunkellin's demise, and that it was stored in Galway Corporation's yard until it was disposed of to the Castlegar Memorial Committee by the then county manager, Mr. O'Flynn, and then it became used as the plinth for the volunteer monument. At the time of the unveiling of the memorial, there were 6 names inscribed. The 4 names on the front are those of men who took part in volunteer activities. Only one of them is a native of Castlegar parish, Tomás O'Dugan, or Thomas, otherwise known as Baby Duggan. He was from Rosshill, near Roscam. Joseph Donlan was a native of the parish of Kilkerran in North Galway, but his brother was teaching in Castlegar parish, and Joe Donlan came to live with him. Jack Lohan was a native of Galway City. His family lived in Wood Quay, and he was an engineering student at UCG who died during the Civil War. Louis Darcy was a native of Headford, and he died during the War of Independence and would have been well known to many of the men of the Castlegar Company. On the west side of the monument were the names of 2 priests, both natives of Castlegar parish, the Reverend Henry or Harry Feeney and the Reverend Thomas Burke. And both were young Catholic curates at the time of the volunteer activity, and they provided spiritual chaplaincy services and advice to the volunteer company. Two names were added later. These were Brian Malloy and Michael Newell, both natives of Castlegar parish who figured strongly in many events that the Castlegar volunteers were involved with during the revolutionary period, including the abortive rising in 1916, where they followed Liam Mellows to Athenry and Lyme Park and all of those areas, and both of them interned afterwards. Brian Malloy and Michael Newell were present at the unveiling of the monument in 1951, and they both died in 1958, and their names were added to the monument after that. This is a photograph of some of the people who were there on the day that the unveiling took place. Probably 2 things strike us straight away. One is that the group around the monument is entirely male, even though we know that there was an active Cumann unit in Castlegar during the revolutionary period. The other striking thing is the very rural looking surrounding of the monument in 1951. And 70 years later, of course, none of us would really say that the surroundings of the monument are rural now, because there are houses and businesses and industrial buildings and a very busy road close by. Many people assisted in the creation of this presentation, and I'd particularly like to thank Anna Kenny Walsh, who provided me with a copy of the photograph in the previous slide, and the library at NUI Galway, where it was possible to get the picture of Eyre Square, including Lord Dunkellin's statue, from J.V. Finnerty's Ireland in Pictures, published in 1898.